In this episode, I speak to Nathan Hirsch about what it is like creating and having a remote culture within your organisation. Nate's first business, which he scaled to a turnover of millions of dollars, was set up whilst he was in college. He found that he needed remote workers but could not get the calibre he needed. Nate therefore built his own remote hire platform, which ended up with a turnover of $8 million a year. Last year, Nate sold that business and has built another one called Outsource School, which is an education platform for how to scale your business using remote workers. This is a fascinating conversation on how you can build a business that operates entirely remotely. Even hiring interviews take place without voice or video input. Nate uses a blended approach to work and people. The whole person is brought into work at all times. Listen to the rest of the conversation. Before we begin our conversation, here is a quick shout out to the pathologically curious. Check out the Maverick Paradox magazine. It's a digital magazine written by Mavericks for business owners and professionals. You can find the magazine at themaverickparadox.com. The magazine's aim is to provoke Maverick leadership everywhere. Welcome to the Maverick Paradox podcast, where we explore what it is to be a maverick and discover effective modes of leadership. I am Judith Germain, and my mission is to propel the maverick mindset into a world where character and integrity will ultimately have a higher premium than personality and bureaucracy. So thank you for joining me on this journey. If you would like to continue with me, then please subscribe to my podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or one of the other popular podcast platforms. And today, our guest is Nate Hirsch. Hi, Nate.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming along. Really excited for our subject, but before we really get into that, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so I'm a longtime entrepreneur. I started selling on Amazon out of my college dorm room when I was 20 and I ended up scaling that business. I got it at a good time selling baby products and toys. And I scaled that business to selling millions of dollars every year. I scaled it using virtual assistants because college kids turned out to be pretty unreliable and no one in the real world wanted to work for me. So I got into the remote hiring world, the Upworks, the Fivers. I really just didn't like their process of posting a job, getting 50 people to apply, interviewing them one by one. And I wanted something better and faster. So I ended up building my own platform, FreeUp, a marketplace for pre-vetted virtual assistants, freelancers, and agencies. We scaled that business for the past 4 years, got it to 8 figures, and was acquired last year in 2019, which was kind of cool. And now that we've helped with the transition there, we're working on our new venture, Outsource School, which is an education membership platform where we teach people how to scale their business with virtual assistants, very similar to what we did with both FreeUp and my Amazon business. So that's a short version. And I'm all about hiring lean startups and growing using VAs.
I think that's amazing. You're clearly a maverick who I define as a willfully independent person. And I just can't imagine, would you say you was 20-ish?
Yeah, I've never had a real job. I had some internships before that, but.
I think that is so cool. So what was going through your mind when you first, you're in there at 20 and you're going, what went through your mind? Was you like, I just want to make some money? Did you look at it and say, I want to run my own business? What made you start?
Yeah, so I think there were two sides of it. From a young age, my parents were both teachers, and my dad always taught me the importance of money and finances and savings. And then on the flip side of that, they always made me get like 40, 50-hour-a-week jobs from the time I was 15 to 20. So working for minimum wage to $12 an hour in there. And I just learned a lot about business and sales and management. But I also learned how much it sucked having a boss. I really just hated it. And so when I got to college, I kind of looked at college as a ticking clock. I had 4 years to start my own business, or I was going to go into the real world and never look back. And I started hustling with the goal to never have to get a real job. And I'm fortunate that it turned out that way.
Wow. What were you studying?
So I actually went to school for entrepreneurship, small business, and I started off being undecided. And I remember the entrepreneurship program was brand new, and we sat up there, all the business students, and every single faculty member went up there, and they talked about finance and why you should take economics and why you should take marketing. And the person from the brand new entrepreneurship department went on stage and she said, if you ever want life freedom, if you ever want financial freedom, the only way to do it is to become an entrepreneur. And that's all she said. And she walked off. And for me, that was like sold it in my head. I'm like, this is what I want to major in.
That's an amazing style. She must have been a maverick too.
Oh yeah. I mean, she was the best. It was kind of cool because I was building a business while I was studying how to build a business.
That is really good. A lot of people I know say that quite a few entrepreneurial degrees are run by people who have never set up a business, never run a business. And therefore it's kind of very sort of stale learning. So I guess that must have been different where you were.
Yeah, I mean, there is a part of it that does get outdated quickly. And I mean, I was growing an e-commerce business back in 2008, 2009. No one really knew what e-commerce was. So it was tough for me to learn from the teachers there. But there were other things that were very relevant, like how to do your finances and monthly reports and cash balance sheets and stuff like that. And then also just learning like management and dealing with people and case studies of other businesses and their success and their failures. So I would say part of it applied and part of it probably didn't.
And free up. So did you go into doing free up as this is something that I'm going to sell, or was it I have a need for people and I might as well get on and do it myself?
I definitely didn't go into it thinking that I wanted to sell. I went into it thinking I want to build a platform that I would use, something that I wanted. And I really designed it around what the perfect virtual assistant freelance platform for me was. And for that, I mean, the pre-vetted, I always wanted a platform that pre-vetted people before it led them on. I wanted a platform that matched me up quickly with applicants. I wanted a platform that had great support in case anything went wrong. And I wanted a platform that protected me against turnover by covering replacement costs. So I really just designed it into what I liked. And then I started listening to feedback of what customers and people using the service liked and tweaked it and adjusted it from there.
Actually, I recently did a podcast with Harris Rosen, Hospitality Maverick, and he seemed to have a similar mindset in the sense that when he wanted to, he had his hotels and he did the insurance, found out how it didn't really work, and he just set up a primary care system and then went, oh, I could do insurance, and then I can just do this. And it seems that you've done something very similar where you've seen a pressing need that you have, what's existed out there doesn't work, doesn't fit, and you've just created your own thing.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's where I feel like a lot of great businesses come. They come from a need, they come from a problem. And I think those are the ones that end up scaling long term. And I mean, I'm kind of doing the same thing with Outsource School. People reached out to me and said, hey, can you teach us how to or hire virtual assistants better and apply virtual assistants to my business better? And this is something I wish I had. I spent 5 years struggling to hire VAs and making mistakes. And I wish someone had just taught me, hey, here's a system, here's a process, here's things to follow, here are things to avoid.
That sounds good. So like any good maverick, I expect that you're doing something else now. What are you working on right now?
Yeah, right now my focus is 100% on Outsource School, my new venture. It's an education platform. We started off by launching this course called Cracking the VA Code, which goes down into our systems and processes for interviewing, onboarding, training, and managing virtual assistants. And people really like the course. So we turned it into a membership where if you buy the course, you get a 1-year membership to our portal. And we're launching other courses taught by us and other top experts on how to hire VAs to get on podcasts, how to hire VAs to be your bookkeeper, how to hire VAs for lead generation, and more and more. And we're going to continue adding to that. We also support our community. So if someone's trying to hire a VA for something, they're struggling, they have questions, we're there to help them. We have a private group off of that. And then we're also building a software. The same developer that built the Free Up platform and was part of the buyout is working on this SOP building software that's coming out in the next 30 to 60 days that we're really excited about. So I'm curious how it all comes together, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
That sounds very interesting and also very needed. Do you think in terms of with COVID-19, that people will continue to use VAs, or do you think people might retreat back into trying to do everything themselves?
I mean, I think there's some businesses that will temporarily, but I think long term, I mean, the world was already going more and more remote, going more and more towards VAs. And this is just accelerating the process. So I think that the VAs are going to become even more relevant after this than they were before.
Yeah. And I think you've been in business now for how many years?
I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years. This new venture, Outsource School, is about 60 days in.
Okay, so you've been doing it for a decade then, really, which is a long time. So how would you go about building a culture for an organisation where the staff are remote?
To me, it all comes down to communication and starting off by establishing communication channels. Hey, we're going to use email, we're going to use Slack, we're going to use Viber, and here's how we're using each channel. So emails are for responses within 24 hours. Slack is for meetings, and when you're working, you're on Slack. Viber is for emergencies. And then from there, it's about having consistency and having those meetings and coming up with creative ways to get the most out of those meetings. So, for example, we have a Monday morning meeting. The first 5 minutes of every meeting, people show pictures from their weekend and people comment and engage and get to know each other. And then we dive into the important stuff. We give updates. We talk about last week. We talk about projects in the future weeks. And then the team leaders give their updates and they have ownership on their teams and the people on their team. So I think having that kind of structure where it's that balance between personal and professionalism. I also think hiring the right people that have the right mentality that are in line with your goals. I mean, we know what our culture is, and that's a starting point. We love people that come with feedback and ideas and aren't afraid to speak their mind, but have professionalism and are nice and want to build relationships and want to treat people well. So we know what we want in a culture. We make sure we hire the right people to be in our culture, and then we make sure that the communication channels and the way we meet and the way we talk to each other continue to be part of that culture that we're building.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you know that you are recruiting the right people? I mean, is everything in the business remote, or do you ever meet up?
Everything's in the business remote. I mean, randomly we'll have like certain meetups. Like, for example, one of my VAs happened to be on a trip to the US last year and she stopped by and I treated her to dinner and stuff like that. I mean, but that's the exception, not the norm. So everything's remote. I think we encourage people to get to know other people on the team and build relationships with other people on the team. In terms of how do you get them up front, instead of just vetting for skill and experience, which a lot of people do, we vet them for attitude and communication as well. We want to know what motivates them. Are they motivated by money, which we don't like, or are they motivated by other stuff like self-improvement and growth and that entrepreneurship spirit, and they want to build something and be part of a family and part of a team? And or how do they handle adversity? Because not everything is rainbows and butterflies. And if your client says something or does something, you don't want them to get angry or aggressive. You want them to be the bigger man, the bigger woman. And then communication really holds it all together. You want people who can respond quickly, who can get on the same page very quickly, who can have a constructive conversation where even if two people disagree on something, they can still come to a common resolution. And that's really what we look for as much as we look for what their skill and their background is.
So that's really good. I'm just trying to, because what I sense is that your organisations run very different than the average organisation. And yet the average organisation would say, yes, we recruit people correctly, but they're struggling. They're struggling to work remotely now, and I'm just trying to. So your recruitment process, is it all? Do you do like video recruitment, or is it all just audio? How do you handle people that's not good on video? Or because some people really struggle to be on video when they're speaking to.
So I hire a lot from the Philippines. And to be honest, we don't do any interviews via audio. We don't do any interviews via video. The only exception to that is if their role has to do with audio or video. So if they're going to be talking to customers on the phone, then yeah, I'm going to talk to them via audio or have them send me a clip of them talking, whatever it is. But most of our interviews, our onboarding, our meetings, our day-to-day communication is all on Slack. I mean, our interviews, we write everything out. We make them write it out. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. The main reason is that's how we communicate 95% of the time. So why would I interview someone via video if I don't communicate with them day to day on video? I want to see how they respond to Slack, whether we can get on the same page quickly, how their English is when they're typing and stuff like that. In addition, like you said, a lot of people are very shy on video, very shy on audio. The best virtual assistant I've ever hired, named Chickie Ann, who's worked with me for 8+ years, she is very shy on camera. And if I had done a video interview with her, I would have missed out on the best hire I ever made. So I don't think that video and audio accomplishes what a lot of people want to accomplish. There are plenty of people that can talk on video and aren't very good at their job or aren't very good at communicating on Slack and vice versa. So if you're using video to build a relationship and get to know someone and see if they're a real person, then do the interview via Slack, like I recommend. And then at the end, just say, hey, can we hop on a 5-minute video? And I like to give them a heads up. I don't like to just randomly say, hey, by the way, let's do a video. I'll tell them a day ahead so they can prepare, because a lot of people in the Philippines, they'll want to prepare their house or their background or put on makeup or make sure they're presentable. They don't like just randomly being told, hey, we're jumping on a video now with no notice. So that's kind of my overall take. And I mean, we've had a lot of success hiring that way. And I think a lot of people that join our membership at Outsource School, at first they say, oh my God, I can't believe we're not doing video. I can't believe we're not doing audio. And then after they go through a bunch of interviews using our systems and our process, they get it, and it works out even better for them.
You know what? That really is innovative. I've never heard of anybody interviewing without video and audio, but I can see the benefit in the sense that you don't have people that've got disabilities discriminated against, and you don't discriminate against gender and colour as easily because you're not seeing it as much. But how do you ensure that the person you're hiring is the person that's done the interview if you don't see or hear them?
Yeah, I mean, I use the Free Up Marketplace, the platform I built, and I have nothing to do with them anymore, but they spend a lot of time vetting people. They have people's IDs. They spend a lot of time on interviews. So I don't even have to worry about that. I mean, the average VA cares a lot more about staying on the platform and staying with you as a client than they do about stealing your information or pretending to be someone else. And I also build relationships with the VAs. I connect with them on social media. I get to know them and their family. I tell them about me, and that kind of stuff builds trust over time. And it usually doesn't take you that long to realize that someone's outsourcing their work, or they're not doing a good job, or they don't have the skills that they said they did, or whatever it is. And those are usually short-term problems that you can quickly identify and replace that person.
That makes sense. One of the things that I've noticed is that what stops, I don't know about the US, but certainly in the UK, what stops people traditionally from doing a lot of remote working is that the managers felt like they couldn't be sure a member of staff was actually working when they're at home. And for someone that, works so much with virtual assistants, is that not a concern because they're not employees and they're only paid when they're working, or does it not matter because if you've hired them correctly, they will work? Just trying to...
Sorry, what was the concern?
Well, the concern tends to be, or has been in the past anyway, that if you can't see the employee, you can't be sure they're working.
Yeah, I mean, there's tools out there. There's tools out there like Time Doctor that'll monitor their screen. I personally don't believe in that. I like to build relationships with people. I mean, and build that trust element. I mean, my whole thing is it just doesn't take very long to figure out if someone is doing the work or not doing the work. And you should have metrics in place where hey, our customer service emails getting done, or are they not getting done? And those are things you can quickly address. And for me, the short-term loss of someone trying to game the system and me catching them versus the long-term benefit of building trust and relationships and having a team that I can depend on far outweighs that. So yeah, you have to make that trust short-term, but you can make adjustments, you can make tweaks. And if you get good team leaders and good assistant team leaders who are on top of their teams, they know what a normal workday looks like. They know what that normal output should be like. And for example, at FreeUp, we had 35 people on our internal team, and we had team leaders for different things. Let's say customer service. If someone wasn't cutting it in customer service, that customer service team leader knew it. They identified it quickly. We let them go quickly. So if you have the systems and processes in place to know what that output should be, then that takes care of really all the problems when it comes to making sure someone's actually working.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess with training, you would use software that allows people to share screens. And so in some respects, the training probably would be better remotely, because when you're in an office, you always get diverted. Oh, sorry, I can't train today, I've got a meeting, or someone's just come in. Whereas if you've scheduled a time to do the training and you're sharing screens to do it, then it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I actually opened up an office around year 5 of my Amazon business, and it ended up being one of the worst business decisions I ever made. I mean, I thought it was going to lead to more productivity, and it actually led to more drama. And I realized that remote freelancers, remote workers can actually be even more valuable. They can be more productive, more focused, and you don't have necessarily that drama that you end up with in the office. So I've kind of found that. And in terms of training, I mentioned we're building an SOP software. Imagine a loom that you can right click every time you get to a new step and it records the steps. So if you need to replace a step, you can. If a VA needs to just watch a step or read a step, they can. And you can give access to different VAs. But I always recommend valuing your time at the highest possible level when you're training. I think a lot of people make the mistake of doing one-on-one training from the beginning. And then 1 week in, if the VA is not working out well, you have a tough decision to make. Do you start over and that's an entire week you'll never get back? Or do you give them another week and then you're 2 weeks committed? And so what I recommend doing is having an SOP, whether it's video, whether it's text, giving them a week or a day or a few hours, depending on how long the SOP is, to learn it and study it, and then test them on it and see if they get it. And if they know 80% of it, great. You can teach them that last 20% one-on-one. But if they only know 30% of it, pay them for their time, part ways nicely. And yeah, you lost a little bit of money, but you didn't waste any of your time. And time is the most valuable thing when you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just curious. I was just sort of thinking that you'll be able to, as this writes itself out, be able to tell the good and the bad companies, because the good companies will do what you're doing and spend the time setting up systems that allows personality and allows people to feel cohesion and together. And then there'll be other companies that will just buy one of those systems that, logs tapping on the, how long has someone been tapping on the screen, how long they've been looking on the screen, and that's micromanagement to the worst degree.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it is a learning process, and I think that's what we're really determined to do on Outsource School, is to kind of curve that process. And I mean, a lot of people struggle with SOPs, and we want to make it easy for you to create SOPs. We've got training on it. We got the software coming out, and I think anything you can do to become better at systems and processes is going to benefit your business. I mean, even if you look at FreeUp, why were we able to sell FreeUp? The only reason we were able to sell it is because we had SOPs for every little thing. When they were doing due diligence and they said, hey, how does customer service work? How does billing work? We provided them with 20, 30, 40, 50-page SOPs that we had built over time, that were kept updated, that our VAs kept updated. So everything had a system, everything had a process, everything had a person that was doing that system. And that's how you make your business not only scalable, but also sellable.
I've got another question actually on the remote culture thing. One of the things that people talk about is that those random meetings that you have in an office when you're getting a cup of coffee, getting some water, waiting outside for a meeting to start. How do you try to replicate that in a remote culture, or do you just say these kind of serendipity meetings are just not going to happen?
Yeah, I personally don't find a ton of value in a lot of those meetings. I think a better way is to encourage people to meet other people on the team, and you can do that remotely, to spend time at each meeting talking about personal stuff. I mentioned sharing stuff about your weekend, asking how people are doing, encouraging people to engage not just on a business level, but a personal level. And if you look at my VA team at FreeUp, they all loved each other. They continue to love each other. They're working together now. They just sent me a TikTok video of all of them doing a dance off while they're stuck in quarantine. Like they are building relationships. They are friends. They are a family. And that doesn't change whether you're remote or not remote.
So what you're talking about, this is really interesting, is that you're talking about a blended approach where you're not just, this is the work, this is what we're going to talk about. You're talking about bringing the person into the workplace all the time. So at the moment, people are in offices, as soon as they hit a meeting, it's kind of right, we're here to discuss X, and this we'll discuss. And all that kind of socializing, getting to know each other, caring about each other happens outside the meeting. So what you're suggesting is that you do that as part of your meeting, and that's how you keep them together?
It can be other stuff too. I mean, for example, we had a lot of people in the Philippines, and we said, hey, if they ever want to meet up with each other, we'll cover lunch. So some of that stuff does happen. And some people will do Skype calls or phone calls or messages with each other that we're not a part of, that aren't a scheduled meeting. I mean, they connect with each other on social media. They get to know each other as a family. And
they're not presumably penalised for doing that. Because
no, it's encouraged.
My questions may sound really weird for you because you're not working in an office ever. So you must think, why are you asking stupid questions? But it's kind of often in most offices, the kind of socialising is heavily restricted. Do you see what I mean? So it's curious that it's seen as a natural thing that you just do? Because I can imagine that the average manager would be like, okay, we've hired you, we're going to be remote, we've hired you to work typically between these hours, and in those hours, we're not expecting you to connect with somebody just to have a chat, just to do that socialise things because you're there to work or paying you to work. So I can see how all that kind of serendipity type meetings that you would normally get in office won't happen if people are working remotely because they are persuaded not to socialise when they're in their working hours. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's different. I honestly think it's better. I think people are more productive. They're getting to know each other even more personally. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like you said, I've never worked at a corporate office, but I know that the culture that we build in our remote teams go a long way, and they consider each other family.
I think your method is wonderful. I mean, I think it's interesting because it's the way that the world will go, especially if this COVID-19 becomes a seasonal thing. Then we'll be doing more and more and more remote. So we will have to find a different way of working.
Right, 100%.
So will your company ever consult, do you think? So if people do the Outsource School, but if somebody said, actually, we'd like someone to come in and consult with us on how to do this, would you be doing that? Is that in the plans?
I don't know. I think personally, I probably won't be doing one-on-one consulting. That's just not an avenue that I want to go down at this time. But I mean, we do offer a lot of consulting in the sense of help and SOPs, and we have a community where you can post questions and get help. So, I mean, it is on some level. I'm not sure 100% how that part of the business will scale up. But I think if people do want to hire remote, if people have struggled to make bad hires or good hires in the past, if they've never hired VAs before, I do know that Outsource School is there to support them and can make sure that it's effective for their business.
That makes sense. How is it easy to delegate to people remotely that you've never met?
I don't know. I mean, easy is relative, and some people pick it up more than others. I think it's a necessity. I think that the average entrepreneur continues to add stuff to their plate and sometimes forgets to subtract it. And we like to implement 90-day rules where we don't do anything longer than 90 days without turning it into a system and process and delegating it. The first month, you're throwing stuff against the wall, seeing what works and what doesn't. The second month, you have a good idea of what doesn't work and you're fine tuning. Maybe you're interviewing someone. The third month, you've hired someone and you're training them and you're onboarding them. So I think that getting the mentality, it takes a mindset shift as an entrepreneur, but everything's a process. Hiring someone's a process. Training's a process. Firing someone's a process. Turn every little part of your business into processes. And over time, you're going to be delegating more and more and more. It's going to become not only easier, but also addicting.
Yeah, and I suppose it allows you to scale up a lot quicker, isn't it? Because you can then use your mind to strategize and move forward rather than doing the day-to-day all the time.
Exactly.
So what have you learned being an entrepreneur then that would be really good to share?
I mean, failure is just part of being an entrepreneur. I mean, I reach out to podcasts all the time and get rejected. I reach out for networking calls and partnerships. And I mean, that is part of the process. And you have to be able to take it professionally. You have to be able to be the bigger man, the bigger woman. You have to be able to follow up and yet not take necessarily no for an answer or try a different avenue. I've had people that I tried to get on their podcast for 3 years before they let me on. And the only reason they let me on is because I stayed professional. I didn't get mad or frustrated or upset at them. I just kept following up, kept growing my business, kept showing value. And eventually that happened. And other times it doesn't work out that way. But I think people need to be constantly putting themselves out there, whether it's trying to form partnerships, trying to get clients, trying to get on podcasts, whatever that is. And they have to look at failure as a learning opportunity and create that consistency where, hey, I'm going to reach out to 5 new podcasts every day. Even if I get rejected, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep tweaking my approach until I get on more and more. And you can apply that to any part of your business. And I think that's how I've had a lot of success, just that consistency, even though that consistency comes with failure every single week.
And do you see that failure as just an essential part of success, or is it something that you ever get frightened of?
I mean, like no one's going to have success without failure. I mean, I think failure, sometimes that people get into the mode like, oh, like every failure is a good failure. And I'm not sure I 100% agree with that. But I think that depending on how you look at failure and how you react to the failure, that's what makes good entrepreneurs. I mean, some of the best lessons I've ever learned came from failure. One time I didn't diversify my manufacturers, and I had a manufacturer drop me when I was on vacation, and my entire business depended on him. But I learned a very valuable lesson about having more than one manufacturer, and I scaled my business over the next 6 months to not only be bigger, but be more diverse. So you can take failures like that and turn them around. I remember at the beginning of FreeUp, our software crashed on the weekend and we lost all this data. Well, that led to me getting backups and a backup to the backup, and we never had that issue again. So sometimes those lessons lead to important changes to your business.
Yeah, and did you ever have any particular doubts or concerns about the businesses, or was you just confident and you just knew you were going to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you start a new business, you never know what people's reaction and feedback is going to be. I mean, the first 6 months of FreeUp, all we heard was the world doesn't need another freelancing platform, and Upwork and Fiverr are already there. And it took a little while to overcome that. So I don't think I ever have like negative doubts, like I'm going to quit and go get a job just because I don't personally want to do that. But I think that I never, just because I sold FreeUp doesn't mean that the next 4 businesses I start are all going to be successful. That's just not how business works. So I think there's a certain amount of realism and understanding the logic behind things and making adjustments to try to get towards that success.
Okay, that makes sense. I think that's an almost good place to stop. But before I do that, is there any questions that you would like me to have asked that I didn't get around to asking?
I don't know. I mean, I think my overall theme to people is we live in a crazy time, but there's also a lot of opportunity. It's never been easier to start a business money-wise. I've started 3 businesses now with less than $5,000. When in the history of the US could you do that? On top of that, you don't need to hire people full-time anymore. You can hire people part-time, full-time, project-based. You can hire people 5 hours a month if you want to. So you have the flexibility to start a business online, to keep it lean, to hire people at all over the world with different price points, different skill sets. And that's a kind of flexibility that you can take advantage of in these times.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Would you come back again, Nate, and talk about something else?
Of course.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. And anyone listening, I'm pretty easy to contact. Nathan Hirsch on Facebook or LinkedIn, Real Nate Hirsch on Instagram or Twitter. Feel free to connect with me and check out Outsource School. If that's something that could help your business, we'd love to have you.
Brilliant. Thank you once again for tuning into the Maverick Paradox podcast. I hope you have enjoyed listening to my conversation with Nate as much as I enjoyed having it. If you are pathologically curious and would love to find out more about the Maverick Paradox, then please subscribe to this podcast on one of the popular podcast platforms. Alternatively, you could explore our resources on Mavericks at maverickparadox.com or read the Maverick Paradox magazine. We publish frequently each week. If you subscribe, you will get our monthly newsletter. And let's not forget my book, The Maverick Paradox, The Secret Power Behind Successful Leaders. For those that love a good discussion, you could apply to join our exclusive Facebook group. And finally, if you would like to work with us or just interested in finding out more about the Maverick at work, check out our website maverickparadox.co.uk.